Right now, there are two completely separate conversations happening around Cleveland Browns minicamp, and most people watching from the outside are only paying attention to the wrong one. The internet version of this story is built on slow-motion highlight clips, dramatic music cuts, and hot takes designed to generate clicks before anyone has had time to actually think. The real football version, the one that actually matters when the regular season begins, is far more detailed, far more technical, and far more important than anything trending on social media right now. Today, we are going deeper than the surface-level noise, because the actual story coming out of Cleveland this offseason is bigger than most people realize, and the mainstream coverage is almost completely missing it. Before breaking down individual players, it is critical to understand what minicamp actually is and what it actually is not. Minicamp is a controlled environment. There is no live pass rush, no full contact, and absolutely none of the playoff-level defensive intensity that separates real NFL football from off-season practices. That reality leads a lot of casual observers to dismiss the footage entirely, and that is a serious mistake in the opposite direction. Just because the environment is controlled does not mean the footage is meaningless. It actually reveals critical information if you understand what to look for and what questions to ask. What coaches and scouts are specifically studying during these sessions is not who makes the best highlight throw or the most acrobatic catch. They are studying movement quality, route discipline, release mechanics, footwork, timing, conditioning, communication, and how every player operates inside the offensive structure being installed. The most important question minicamp quietly answers is this: who arrived professionally prepared before evaluation started, and who is still relying entirely on raw athletic ability without the preparation to back it up? In the NFL, every single player on that field was a star somewhere before reaching this level. Talent alone stops being a separator the moment you step inside an NFL facility. Preparation is what coaches trust more than anything else once real competition begins. This particular minicamp carries extra weight because it is the first real opportunity to connect new pieces, Denzel Boston, Concepcion, Spencer Fano, directly into the offensive system being constructed around Shedeur Sanders. Every rep, every route, every timing window is a piece of a much larger organizational puzzle being assembled with clear intent. When Denzel Boston steps onto the field, his physical presence is immediately undeniable. The long frame, the big catch radius, the true outside receiver build, these are not characteristics that develop overnight, and they are not characteristics that go unnoticed by defensive coordinators preparing game plans. But the real story around Boston is not simply that he looks physically impressive. The structural impact he creates before the ball is even snapped is what matters most at this level of football analysis. For years, Cleveland's most persistent offensive problem has been straightforward: defenses were completely comfortable crowding the middle of the field because there was no consistent, credible boundary threat forcing them to respect the perimeter. When outside receivers are not respected by opposing defenses, the entire offensive structure begins to collapse inward. Safeties creep downhill, passing windows compress, quarterbacks are forced to throw into traffic constantly, and offensive coordinators lose the flexibility they need to attack defenses from multiple angles. It is the equivalent of navigating rush hour traffic when every available lane is shrinking simultaneously, and it describes almost exactly what Cleveland's offense looked like in far too many recent seasons. The Josh Gordon comparison has been circulating, and it is worth addressing directly rather than dismissing it or overinflating it. The physical profile is similar, the role is conceptually similar, and the structural impact on defensive spacing is the legitimate foundation of the comparison. But prime Josh Gordon was a rare-level player, and no young receiver should carry that kind of historical pressure after a few off-season practices. The roster construction logic behind the comparison makes football sense, the pressure attached to it does not. What matters right now is what Boston is actually showing in these sessions, and what stood out most was not the highlight catches that ended up posted online. Boston was using release stems to manipulate defensive leverage before his routes fully developed, influencing where defenders positioned themselves before making his actual break. This is advanced receiver behavior. It shows the player understands how to control coverage rather than simply reacting to whatever a defensive back gives him. This level of route understanding does not appear after a few walkthrough practices. It gets built during months of invisible work, private training, film study, and repetition that nobody posts on social media. Boston arrived in Cleveland already looking prepared. The footwork was controlled, the timing looked natural, and the releases looked deliberate. For Shedeur Sanders specifically, Boston provides the offense with a boundary weapon that forces defenses to stop cheating coverage toward the middle, which directly cleans up the intermediate throwing lanes where Shedeur Sanders has consistently shown his most comfortable and accurate work. KC Concepcion had drops during these minicamp sessions, and there is absolutely no reason to dance around that fact or bury it underneath layers of excuses and deflection. Drops matter beyond simply losing one individual rep. They affect timing, rhythm, and most importantly, they affect the trust being built between a quarterback and his receiver, and trust at this level is one of the most fragile and most essential components of any functional NFL passing offense. Here is exactly how that erosion happens. A quarterback hesitates half a second longer before throwing to a receiver he does not fully trust yet. Then he skips a read in a critical moment. Then another. Those tiny hesitations compound over time until the offense is operating with invisible restrictions that never appeared on any depth chart. In real NFL games, quarterbacks must throw with complete conviction. There is no room for doubt once the ball is supposed to come out of the quarterback's hand. So yes, Concepcion's hands require consistent improvement moving forward, and saying anything else would not be honest evaluation of what actually happened at these sessions. But reducing his entire minicamp performance to only the drops would miss the bigger picture completely, and that would be equally dishonest analysis. What is actually showing up underneath the mistakes is legitimate burst out of breaks, strong developmental signs in release processing, purposeful footwork, and route stems creating leverage naturally rather than relying purely on straight-line speed. The touchdown connection with Tylen Green is a specific play worth examining beyond the highlight itself. Concepcion did not get open because he outran a defender in a straight line. He created separation through timing, leverage, body positioning, and controlled route execution. That distinction is enormous. Anyone can look fast during off-season practices. NFL defensive backs are fast too. And what separates reliable NFL receivers from players who never last is the ability to manipulate coverage through technique and football intelligence rather than simply hoping to outrun everyone. The genuinely encouraging part of Concepcion's evaluation is this: drops attached to a player who cannot create separation at all is a dead-end situation. Drops attached to a player already showing real technical sophistication in his routes is a developmental problem coaches can actually address and fix. The lower body mechanics, the route intelligence flashes, the movement quality, these are real building blocks. The hands simply have to catch up consistently with the rest of the package, and that is a developmental path that has a realistic destination. Tylen Green's physical talent is real, and it deserves to be acknowledged clearly and without reservation. The arm strength jumps out immediately. The mobility adds a dimension that traditional pocket passers simply do not bring to an offense, and when Green moves outside of structure, you can understand immediately why people are excited about what he might eventually become. These traits are genuine NFL-level tools. But real quarterback evaluation requires balance, acknowledging the upside while simultaneously recognizing where significant development still needs to happen. The biggest current concern with Green's game is his release mechanics. The throwing motion still takes slightly too long at various points in his delivery. In a controlled minicamp environment, defenders are not fully punishing those delays because the competitive intensity is limited. But once live pass rush pressure arrives in full-speed NFL football, every fraction of a second matters enormously. NFL defensive coordinators build entire game plans specifically around exploiting mechanical weaknesses exactly like that, and the evidence was already appearing in these controlled reps. One tight end throw sailed high because the timing and release point were not fully synchronized under pressure simulation. Another sequence showed a miss drifting past the intended target. These are not red alert moments. This is precisely what developmental quarterback reps are supposed to look like early in the process. Some exciting flashes, some inconsistent mechanics, some throws that make you lean forward in your seat, and some that remind you clearly this player is still learning how fast NFL football actually moves at full speed. Green has intriguing physical tools, the arm talent is real, the athleticism is real, but there is a reason he was selected in the 6th round, and stating that directly is not disrespectful. It is honest evaluation. Quarterbacks drafted at that range are typically viewed as long-term development projects, where teams see traits worth investing in while understanding that refinement, consistency, and processing speed all require significant work before those players are ready for consistent NFL defensive pressure every single week. The Cleveland Browns quarterback conversation does not become a genuine controversy because a developmental prospect completed a few encouraging throws during non-contact minicamp sessions, and anyone framing it that way is prioritizing engagement over actual football analysis. The moment these early reps get turned into dramatic quarterback battle headlines, the coverage stops being about football and becomes pure engagement farming, and the people consuming that content deserve better analysis than that. Here is the realistic picture. Nothing happening in these controlled rookie sessions changes Cleveland's actual organizational direction. This franchise is building around Shedeur Sanders. That is not speculation, and it is not fanfiction. Teams reveal what they truly believe through their actions, not through social media debates, and every major move Cleveland has made since this offseason began points clearly in the same direction. Every significant offensive decision connects back to maximizing Shedeur Sanders' specific strengths as a quarterback. Boston addresses the boundary size problem. Sanders thrives when defenses are forced to respect the perimeter rather than collapsing inward every single snap. Concepcion adds horizontal spacing and speed stress that prevents defensive compression. Once spacing improves, quarterbacks who operate through timing and precision become dramatically harder to defend consistently. The offensive line investments were massive financially, a direct and deliberate organizational response to what happened during Shedeur Sanders' rookie season behind unstable and inconsistent protection. What that experience revealed internally was significant. Despite facing constant pressure and genuinely chaotic conditions, Shedeur Sanders showed competitive poise, accuracy flashes, and mental resilience, and organizations around the league noticed, coaches inside the building noticed, and teammates noticed. Cleveland's response was not a small temporary patch on an existing problem. They attacked the structural issue entirely, signaling clearly that this is a franchise making a serious and long-term commitment to protecting and developing their quarterback properly. This is not random roster assembly. Every addition fits a specific offensive identity: bigger outside targets, stronger protection, better spacing flexibility, more route intelligence, and more structural balance built around timing and accuracy, all connecting directly back to Shedeur Sanders and the kind of offense that plays to his documented strengths. Perhaps the most genuinely encouraging thing happening inside the Cleveland Browns facility right now has nothing directly to do with highlight throws or viral catch clips at all. It is the culture forming early in this process, and that is the story most coverage is skipping entirely. Minicamp reveals something coaches identify almost immediately: who arrived prepared before evaluation started, and who showed up expecting to figure everything out after getting there. Prepared players move differently from the very first rep. They process information faster, understand spacing more quickly, communicate more cleanly, and make fewer repeated mistakes. Even their body language communicates something professional from day one, and coaches with experience in this league can identify that difference within the first few sessions. Unprepared players may still flash raw athleticism, but everything feels rushed, inconsistent, or reactive, because they are trying to catch up while the evaluation clock is already running in real time. Multiple young offensive pieces in Cleveland arrived looking like they understood the assignment long before minicamp cameras turned on. That is not a small detail. It is one of the clearest early indicators of a locker room being built with the right foundation. The Browns are not simply trying to assemble a strong starting lineup. They are building legitimate roster depth across the entire team, and those are two fundamentally different things in the NFL. Real contenders survive adversity because the players at the bottom of the roster are also capable, prepared, and fully invested in the process. That is where NFL seasons are quietly saved or quietly lost every single year around the league, and Cleveland appears to be building that kind of competitive culture with clear and deliberate intent: every practice sharper, every position battle more competitive, every player earning their opportunity rather than expecting it based on draft position or off-season hype. Pull back and look at this entire offseason as a connected whole rather than a collection of separate isolated events, because that is exactly what it is. This minicamp is not some random standalone development. It is another connected piece of a much larger plan forming around Shedeur Sanders, and every element of that plan is pointing in the same direction. The offensive line investments, the receiver additions, the coaching infrastructure, the developmental mindset, all of it connects back to the same organizational identity being built with genuine purpose and long-term vision. Cleveland no longer looks like a franchise stuck in survival mode or recycling temporary fixes while waiting for luck to change their trajectory. The signal coming out of this offseason is clear: the structure around Shedeur Sanders is being built carefully, deliberately, and with real long-term vision attached to every decision. Real contenders get built quietly before the wins ever show up publicly. That is how serious football cultures develop in the NFL, and if you look closely enough at what Cleveland is assembling right now, the direction this organization is heading becomes increasingly clear with every passing week. If this breakdown gave you something the highlight pages and reaction channels never will, smash that like button right now. Every like directly tells the algorithm that this kind of real, detailed football analysis is worth pushing to more people who actually care about understanding the game. And if you are not subscribed yet, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications immediately, because this Browns story is only getting started, and you absolutely do not want to miss where it goes next. The rest of the league will eventually figure out what is being built in Cleveland. Make sure you already knew before they did.